got a little bit more to discuss with you because people accepted.
Yeah.
Again,
Just keep down. Yes. So we can see my face.
Hi, Banu. Hi, Katie. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, we are having some technical difficulties for the cameras right now that IT is actively trying to resolve. So we're just going to give it a few more minutes so we're not just a black screen for all meeting.
Sounds good.
The swearing in happens with the town clerk. We all had to go to the office. Yeah.
Folks online, can you see what I'm sharing right now? Yes?
Yes, I can.
Great. Okay.
I think I'm ready because right now this is the first meeting of the Inland Wetlands Agency. Oops, sorry.
Recording in progress.
Because this is the first meeting after the election, you are without a chair and a vice chair and a secretary. So I'm going to just call the meeting to order. I'm going to call the November 17th Inland Wetlands Agency Committee or Inland Wetlands Agency meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. Members present are Aho, Accorsi, Anglin, Chandy, DeVivo, Fertoni, Ron, Ward, and Wutch. Alternates present are Marcelino and Walters and Zychek. None of the alternates are seated. And now I'm going to turn this over. So right now we have to open the floor to nominations. We need to have you nominate both a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. And those would be three separate motions. You can use the same motions as we printed for the PZC. And if someone wants to put a name on the floor for the chair, that would be great. Mr. Ron?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Paul Aho as chair for Inland Wetlands and Planning and Zoning, if we can do that at one time.
No, we have
Do
to
them
do it separate. Yeah,
Separate.
Yeah.
Inland Wetlands, please.
great,
Ward would like to second that.
great. Any discussion? All those in favor? Great, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now can someone put a motion to nominate a vice chairperson, please?
Of course, he nominates Beanie Shandy for vice chair.
Second.
1 seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And then the last but not least, you need a secretary. Currently, you've got Katie Fertoni. We do have we have another Katie, we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but are you still wanting to serve as secretary?
People want me, sure, I can be secretary.
Okay, we do have another willing contender, but it's up to you. So if you'd like to say, but anyways, if someone like to nominate someone as secretary.
Ron will nominate Katie for Tony.
Someone want a second?
DeVivo will second.
Okay, all those in favor? Any discussion, rather? All those in favor? Say aye. Great. All right, I'm going to hand this over to your chair. I'll actually keep this. You have your motions.
I need my cheat sheet.
Take it back from me.
Thank you. Good to be back. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll continuing with the inland wetlands. We have a short meeting for inland wetlands, which consists of consent agenda, approval of minutes from November 3rd.
I can do that.
Okay,
I did watch the video.
okay,
Of course, he moves to approve the consent agenda as presented.
okay. Moved by Corsi,
Second by DeVivo.
second by DeVivo. Any discussion? All in favor?
Katie Fatoni, is abstaining because I did not watch the video.
Okay.
Budget
Passes.
abstaining as well.
Okay. Right. So with 3 abstentions, it passes otherwise unanimously. There's a communication from the Conservation Commission, and we have a public hearing, which we're going to continue this, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Do we open it?
You have to open and then continue
Open it and
immediately.
then close and open it.
Open it and
Open it,
continue.
continue it.
Don't
Open and
close
continue.
it.
Don't
Yeah.
No one say close it.
Careful. Okay, no, don't. I won't mention that word. Okay, so I open the public hearing at 6:13 p.m. Public hearing pertains to the application of the town of Mansfield for street improvements on Maple Road. And members present are Aho, Corsi, Anglin, Chandy, DeVivo, Fertoni, Ron, Ward, Wutch, and alternates Marcelino, Walters, and Sychek, who are not seated tonight. We have a motion to continue. Do we have any discussion before that?
The only update, Mr. Chair, is that engineering staff is in receipt of the wetlands report. And so they are looking it over right now, and then I'm going to look it over. But we would like to present it to the Conservation Commission, and because this has come in very recently, we don't feel like we have given it our best review to reassure you that we think that all items of concern have been addressed in the report.
Okay. So, if someone would like to read the continuation.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yeah.
Michael, you said you're going to present this to Conservation Commission.
Yes.
When we reopen this hearing, will we have their response?
Yes, so the Conservation Commission meeting is Wednesday.
Okay.
And so that will be included in your next packet under the Conservation Commission meeting minutes. And if they have any questions for the town engineer, I will have the town engineer write a response to those questions, trying to address those ahead of the meeting.
Okay, we have a motion printed to continue it.
Do
Which
that.
moves to continue the application W1639 Town of Mansfield, Department of Public Works, complete street improvements on Maple Road to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the IWA on 12/1/2025 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers, RDB Peck Building, 4 South Eagle Road, Mansfield, Connecticut.
Moved by Woods,
Second by DeVivo.
second by DeVivo. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, passes unanimously, and the public hearing is continued. Okay, one last thing for IWA is the adoption of the schedule for next year, which you'll see on the screen there.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So as a body that meets pretty regularly, we have, it is, so I am sharing the screen, but I'm sharing screen 2, and that's not convenient. Let me share screen 1 because the people in the room can't see if they're following along. There we go. That should be a little bit better for everyone in the room. So right now we have no meeting scheduled for January 2026. If there is a need for a meeting in January, we would schedule a special meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission, but there's no meeting on the first Monday. Then the only other 2 meetings of note would be September and November, deviate from our first Monday. September, we need to go to the Tuesday because of Labor Day. And then in November, with the exception of this year where we just did this, even though we say we aren't going to, there should not be a meeting on the first Monday in November due to Election Day next year because we won't have to do the POCD again. Please.
By then it should be done.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
There are any concerns with any of these days? Known conflicts of interest for any large number of people, this would be the time to voice those concerns and change the schedule. Otherwise, this will be the proposed IWA schedule for 2026.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
The 17th is my birthday, so,
Oh, well, we'll bring a cake.
well, I'll bring cake, so maybe I won't have cake. That is notable. That's why they put the star by it.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh, good. Okay.
I'll eat the cake then.
I did DeVivo move that we accept the calendar as presented.
Okay, moved by DeVivo,
Second by Corsi.
second by Corsi. Any more further discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. And IWW is done at 6:17. So we'll open the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of November.
Call that to order.
Yep.
Yep.
You have to call me back to order.
Well,
Oh, that's right,
welcome
'cause
to
I'm-
the fun
All right.
procedural schedules.
Next bar on the top. You're only halfway there, buddy.
I'm only halfway there.
Yep. All right. So I, Jennifer Kaufman, call the meeting, the November 17th, 2025 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order at 6:17 PM. Members present are Aho, Acorsi, Anglin, Chandy, DeVivo, Tony, Ron, Ward, Wutch, and alternates Marcelino, Walters, and Zychek. None of the alternates are seated. So again, just as we did for the Inland Wetlands Agency meeting, if you could someone could put a motion on the floor to nominate the chairperson.
Ron nominates Paul Aho as the Planning and Zoning Chairman.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Great, motion passes. All right, now we need a motion for vice chair.
Again, Corsi nominates Chandy for vice chair.
England seconds.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes. And then finally, secretary.
Which nominates Katie for Tony?
Ron will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. All right, I will hand it back over.
Vera escapes for her year. How did you plan as a radar?
Okay, so thank you again. Now we have a consent agenda consisting of many different things. You'll notice there's the minutes and the zoning report and the move to schedule a public hearing on our favorite topic, which is agricultural uses. And then also a public hearing relating to some amendments of zoning regulations. So that's all on the consent agenda.
Right. So the way this works is that you move to approve the consent agenda as a block unless any member of the body wants to discuss an item, at which point they ask for it to be pulled. That item moves to new business, and then everything else gets moved. And as you move the consent agenda as amended.
And just as a point of clarification, you're probably wondering why we're rescheduling the public hearing for the regulations when you did that last month. We had time, we had noticed it already. And the Agriculture Committee cannot come to the December 1st meeting. And they have spent a lot of time on these regulations, and we really wanted them to be here to do a presentation. And we figured while we're doing both one set of regulations, let's do both. And also we did hear from one commission member that they would like the zoning agent report pulled. So we have that as part of the motion, or that can be pulled.
Okay. So, so we can, someone can offer the consent agenda and then someone can pull a portion out, right?
Or you can just pull it out
Okay,
as chair.
I'll pull it out.
Yep.
Which part are we pulling?
You're pulling out, it's on the motion.
The zoning agent
To be.
report.
Okay, all right,
To be or not to be.
okay.
Question, we don't typically include things to schedule public hearings in the consent agenda, do we?
No, you don't. Whoops, no, you don't. You can, normally because it's a public hearing, we like to let folks know, but it will be on the minutes, and you've already discussed these
Okay,
regulations in the past. So I thought it'd just be a little bit easier and make the meeting go a little more quickly.
I'm fine with it, just curious.
Okay, so we have a motion, right?
Accorsi moves to accept the consent agenda with the exclusion of item 2B.
DeVivo second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, so that part of it passes. Should we take up 2B now?
I think we should, let's put that at the let's do the organizational part of the meeting, and then we can talk
Okay.
about the zoning report.
So if we want to do the organizational part first, Jennifer, we'd like to move item 3A after the new business.
Yeah, that's on the motion sheet.
Perfect.
That's already done, or we have to do that?
You have to do that. It's a motion.
Okay, we're gonna move
Yep,
old
yep.
business behind new business. Right,
Correct.
okay.
But someone needs to move it,
Someone
second
needs
it,
to move that.
and you need to vote on it.
England moves will be move old business to after new business.
DeVivo second.
Okay, all in favor? All right. All right. Okay, so passes unanimously. So now we can go to the introduction of new members, right? That's the next thing.
That's the next thing.
And so we have 4 new members. Well, Ken's been here for a while, so he's already he's introduced himself, but perhaps we can have the Vera and Alex and Robert introduce themselves. Well, most people know you, but for those that don't, they give us a short introduction.
Well, I've been actually a long time member of planning and zoning, and it is my passion, and I cried when I had to give it up. But I'm back, and I have a great interest in future developments and how we affect the neighborhoods, and I'm happy to be back on board.
We're glad to have you back. And Alex, you're from being assistant treasurer of Connecticut. Do you feel this is kind of a step down?
Well, this is far more complicated actually than anything I ever did. So I'm a resident of about 47 years. I had actually 20 years ago served as an alternate.
Oh, wow.
In the same spot.
Yeah. And then I was also served on council.
Oh, right.
About 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I'm glad to be able to have an opportunity to serve again. Recently retired, so I've got some free time and I want to be able to invest back in the community. So that's why I'm back. Thank you.
Great. And Robert, when I walked in, I discovered that he and I both worked for Outbreakers Farms in Glastonbury. So we have two poultry experts on the commission now.
Oh, that's not, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Just
My name is Robert Zychek, live on, at 100B Wormwood Hill Road. I'm a relatively a newcomer to for the town of Mansfield. I'm from Ashford. I was born and raised in Ashford on a farm. But I also served on the zoning board in Ashford for, well, the first 2 years I was an alternate, and then I became full-time member. So I have a little bit of experience, but that doesn't mean that it will transfer to Mansfield.
Great. Well, welcome.
Yeah.
Glad to have you. We have a lot of experience on this board now.
You do have a lot of experience.
Sort of
so-
like the Yukon women's basketball team.
Right.
Deep bench we
Yeah.
got now.
Whoever recruited you is just like Gino.
Right. Okay. So now we need to adopt the bylaws, right? Every 2 years.
Every 2 years, and I did include them in your packet. They haven't changed. You did do some significant changes as of in 2023. So basically, the bylaws, I'm just going to run through them really quickly in case you haven't gone through them. Hopefully, which way do I drive here?
Just go to the left and then,
Oh, there we
you
go.
can start.
Oh, there we go. So it has membership terms and offices and absences. You might want to look at the Code of Ordinances, which states that absences from 3 consecutive meetings could be considered a resignation. But we've had that, there can be exceptions to that rule, but we do like folks to let us know. Regular members. So if you're a regular member, you'll be here to vote. Alternate members, you do have 3 alternate members. And the way we seat them is alphabetically. So had there been an alternate that needed to be seated this evening, it would have been Alex Marcelino. Then we would have gone to Josh Walters and then Robert Zychek. So disqualification, we can go through that. We go through that a lot in both the new member guidebook that the clerk just came out with, as well as orientation materials, but it's just that when you should be disqualifying yourself, no member of the commission shall appear or represent any person, firm, or corporation. So basically, if you have any kind of conflict of interest, you may want to disqualify yourself, and you can it's ultimately the commissioner's choice, whether or not they disqualify themselves. And then if it's questionable, the chair will make the final decision. We always say that it's better safe than sorry, because sometimes the applications that you are reviewing do go to court. If you resign, it needs to be in writing and transmitted to the town clerk. Officers, you just elected your chair, your vice chair, and when the chair is not here, the vice chair is the acting chair, and you elected your secretary. Biennially, you will elect your officers, and you did that tonight. Meeting schedules, you just adopted you will adopt the PZC meeting schedule, which meets twice a month as opposed to once a month for Inland Wetlands Agency. A quorum is 5 members, so it's just a majority of the members. On occasion, you'll have an executive session, and there's very specific statutory requirements when you can go into executive session. That's hyperlinked here, and we just need to state that on the record, that some of those things would be if this body might be reviewing an acquisition of property, or if you're looking at pending litigation. In general, you go by Robert's Rules of Order, but this is somewhat, it's a less formal body than the council, except for when you are running a public hearing. That has to be very formal. Agendas and minutes were prepared and posted per the Freedom of Information Act, And then you have an order of business, which we generally follow, call to order, consent agenda, review of the minutes, and then public hearings, old business, new business, reports of officers, committee, and staff, communications, and then adjournment. And a little bit about the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is routine meeting items that can be such as your minutes, or we could have put the scheduling of your meeting, your meeting calendar on consent. And anyone at any time, if you feel like you want to discuss something, you can request that it be removed, and it does not have to be removed by vote. It just will be added back to the agenda. So again, it's approval of minutes, routine recurring matters, members and staff appointments, annual meeting calendars, staff reports, tabling of items to future meetings, other non-controversial items that are not expected to involve significant discussion or debate. So that's sort of a little discretion there. One thing all documentation associated with a consent item has to be provided to members in advance of the meeting. So we can't just add something and say, oh, it's going to be on your consent agenda. So I think I went over that. Public hearings, these are really dictated by statute, and you at any time you can hold a public hearing. You always have to hold a public hearing for certain applications, and staff reviews that with you, but the commission can always hold a public hearing, and that is where you receive comments from the public. We have to record the public hearings. We always say that when you're in a public hearing, you have to try not to joke, try just to keep it to the item at hand, because a lot of times if it does go to court, this will be transcribed, and every and sigh will have to go into that transcript. And sometimes jokes don't transcribe very well. So presentations and visual aids. So we often have visual aids for our public hearings. The chair is the person that presides over those public hearings. And this is sort of something you probably want to go over, just how we run a public hearing. Public comment is presented first by those who are proponents, then opponents, and then folks who need additional information. We always have clear guidelines that we explain before any public hearing. Let's see, staff to the commission, that's us. Michael Stankoff is our environmental planner, Jennifer Kaufman, the director of planning, Jillian Woodmansee, planner 2, and Sandy Forand, who you'll receive lots of emails. She's our administrative services specialist. You can hire consultants. Many times when you have a complicated application, you saw that when you were reviewing all of those applications at the Four Corners, you would hire technical consultants, and those report to the commission. They are paid for by the applicant. So you have a qualified list of technical consultants. People met beforehand, you reviewed them, and what happens is staff will go out, will send an RFP, and then you'll appoint that technical consultant at the time, usually at the receipt of that application. So you review your bylaws biannually, and you can make amendments to these bylaws anytime by a 2/3 vote of the entire voting membership of the commission, only after the proposed change has been read and discussed at a previous meeting, except if you wanted to change your bylaws at any meeting, you'd have to have an affirmative vote of 7 members of the commission. So it's pretty routine. Most of you are probably pretty familiar with all of this stuff, but it's always good to have a little bit of a refresher. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So it's really just a review. You don't have to adopt these. You did adopt them, and they haven't changed since 2003.
Is that a hand, Robert, or were you just? Okay,
No.
you're all set? Perfect.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so now we move on to committee appointments. And first up is regulatory review subcommittee. And basically anyone who wants to participate in that is welcome to join. And but we need to appoint you tonight, right? Is that correct? By the bylaws?
Anyone can call staff. You do have a regularly set meeting, in that meeting schedule. That is on item D. They're basically, you meet on the third Thursday at 5 p.m. We do like to know the folks that are wanting to be committed to that committee, just because it allows us not to send a million agendas out to a whole group of people. However, it's open. There's no, you don't have to be nominated or appointed. And basically, this committee is, they're the ones involved with really making the sausage that is a regulation. So it's a more informal committee, really discussing the pros and cons and the nuances when a regulation is proposed or made by the commission. Any regulation change always goes to the full commission for approval and adoption.
May I ask again? I didn't hear what time it is.
It's at 5 p.m. on the third Thursday. Yep.
So perhaps we just have a show of hands of those who would like to participate. So who would like to participate in the regulatory review committee? Okay, can you jot those down? Yeah. Nobody
Manu,
online.
Katie, neither.
No.
Okay.
Got that.
Got us?
Great.
Okay, and we need to recruit someone to be an alternate member to the Capital Region Council of Governments. Now, this is real easy, 4 times a year by Zoom. And you'll meet a lot of interesting people on the Zoom doing similar things in other towns. So would someone like to do that? Real easy. Alex, you're a natural being having a Hartford connection. Good. Okay, good.
You actually have a regular member and an alternate that we need
Oh,
to.
okay.
Yep.
We need,
So we need 2.
who wants to be an alternate?
All right,
Okay,
I'll stick.
okay, good.
But you got to do this.
Oh, I see.
No, you can be the primary member. I believe.
Or would I be
I was a member before.
I think you can be the primary
Yeah.
member if that's how, that's the wish of the commission. I think it's just a matter of,
Because alternates are you are full members of this body. It's just that if all 12 of you show up like you did tonight, thank you all, only 9 people vote.
No, you're definitely, yes. Yeah, no problem. Katie, would you like to continue to be on the Sustainability Committee?
Yes, please.
Great, great. Okay, you got it. And how about Transportation Advisory Committee? We need someone to do
I'd
that.
like to do that. Paul.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. So we got everyone we need.
Sorry, what about town university relations?
Oh, the town gown thing. Yeah, I'm a member of that.
Through PCC.
Yes, through PCC. So, would you like to participate also in that?
No, I think we only get one, right? And actually, I think I would be conflicted.
I think you might be you might be appointed by the Committee on Committees. I'm not sure that the full, that was not on our list, so it's a different appointment.
So it's in the new member handbook that you distributed in the packet.
Oh, it
It's
is?
these
Okay.
4 plus town gown.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it was, okay, so that was in
Yeah.
the materials that I wrote up. So then we need to add a motion to appoint someone to the Town University Relations Committee
Okay. All right.
meeting. So if someone puts that on the floor, you just have to,
We have to do, I'm s-
you have to nominate a new member for
I'm-
the,
I move to appoint Paul Aho to the Town Gown Committee.
Okay.
Not the right.
those meetings they're virtual, they're hybrid, so you're always welcome to join. And if there's an item that you want either me or Paul to add to the agenda, that's, feel free. That agenda is set by Nathan first on one meeting and then Tony Moran on the other meeting. So they take turns setting the agenda and chairing that board, that committee rather.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to second Ms.
Okay.
Corsi's nomination
Okay,
for Paul Aho for town and gown.
okay. Okay, so we need to vote on that? Okay, all those in favor? Okay. For all of them, right?
So technically, what's on the floor right now is you nominated Paul.
Right.
And so
That's
that's a
really what we're voting
nomination,
on.
which was good. So what do we want to do
Now-
one at a time, or do we just want to approve a slate?
I think let's approve a slate.
We need to list.
Move,
So
yeah.
you can move to appoint the members as discussed, and that they're all written out. So I think that would be fair.
I move to accept the slate of appointments for committees as discussed.
Seconds.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. And one more, meeting calendar.
You looked at the screen once this evening,
This is,
but
so we meet twice as often. with
yes,
planning and
so
zoning.
for the new members of this body, the IWA immediately precedes the PZC on the first Monday of the month. But on the third Monday of the month, it's just PZC business unless there's something particularly pressing for the IWA. Now, because the PZC meets more often, there are a few more conflicts with days, Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, a virtual meeting that we'll be having in October for early voting to accommodate that here. There will be no meeting on the third Monday in August. That is the tradition of this body, as it's the end of the summer season. UConn about to start back up, folks on vacation. The staff did go through these days. No big conflicts with any religious holidays, any other holidays other than those that are listed here. So we've got 3 Tuesdays intended for this coming 2026 calendar year, but if those all work for folks, this is the proposal.
I, DeVivo, move to accept the calendar as presented.
I, Anglin, second Mr. DeVivo's motion.
Moved and second, all in favor? Okay, we've got a calendar. Okay, now we can move to 2B.
Old business.
No, we need,
No.
we have the zoning agent report that is going to be under new business.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Okay, the zoning agent report.
So Mr. Anglin had asked that we move the zoning agent report off the consent agenda. This is submitted to you all but once a month, usually on your second meeting of the month. Mr. Anglin, did you want to talk about what you wanted or discuss an item on the?
Yeah, so I corresponded with Jennifer and Jeline, and I'm interested in understanding better what's going on with 1925 Stores Road. And let's see, I was looking back at old agendas in minutes, and I found one. Ward inquired regarding the status of 1925 Stores Road. Hirsch noted that the owner has been working to address issues on the interior to meet fire marshal requirements, and that due to the life safety nature of those issues, that work took precedence over the work needed on the exterior. Hirsch noted that there is a court order for rectifying the exterior violations and that work is expected to begin shortly. This is from December 7th, 2015. And Ward, of course, there is Vera. I understand this maybe even goes back further than that, maybe a 2-decade problem. My understanding is that this property is not currently accruing any fines for the violations. So I'm very curious about when we expect, what's going on here? When can we understand the progression of this case?
So you are correct. This has been going on about 20 years. It's been cleaned up twice in the past. And most recently, staff worked with the council, with our town attorney, to see if there was anything we could do legally based on what happened last time. And we just got an answer that that was no. So we have to start the process all over again. And that's what we're doing.
Could you explain a little bit of how that process works? Yeah.
I think I can. We thought this particular property it's a junkyard. And we thought we should take some time and do a short, like 5-minute presentation, 5 to 10 minutes over and discuss how we go about enforcing all of a zoning violation. So we didn't have a chance to kind of put that together today, but we felt like we do have a clear and fair way to enforce regulations. It's not easy. It's a challenge. And so what we'd like to do is see if we could put it on the agenda at your meeting on December 1st, if that works for the commission. And we can kind of go through that with, from complaint to the process that we take. And I think staff is looking for the commission to weigh in on the desired outcome of this property. Zoning enforcement is done by statute. There is a statute that allows me to enforce your zoning regulations. It is a cumbersome and lengthy process to get there. But staff and ultimately it ends up with the town attorney. And I go to court with the town attorney and participate in the hearings. But this property is so unique because we have been through this process twice before, and it has ended up worse each time. So, I'm looking for some direction from the commission as to the desired outcome. And this is not the only property in town that has this. This is the only one I know of that has been cleaned up twice in the past, but this junkyard condition is not the only property in town. I could drive you by at least 4 others that I check in on regularly. So, I think the remedies that the enforcement that's available to me, right, has to do with fines. And it has to do with perhaps ultimately this gentleman losing his home. And I think staff would welcome some direction, about what is the desired outcome in these particular cases if compliance can't be achieved for whatever reason.
So there's a zoning board of appeals. My understanding
Right.
of the role of the board of appeals is that they hear variances or contestations of violations when there are non-economic hardships at play, and that's their job. Is that right?
The zoning board of appeals will hear variances, special exceptions, and determinations that, a resident can say to them, the zoning agent is wrong, and here's why. So those are the 3 things that the ZBA can hear. The process for a zoning violation goes to a hearing officer, which is somebody that's been appointed by the town to hear. And that, I got there with him last year with 1925. I got to that point. He requested a hearing. I really thought we were going to get somewhere, and he just cut communication at that point after requesting a hearing. He cut off all communication with me. I think a lot of the past successes with him had to do with multiple departments and their view of the violation. There are some safety things. Could a fire truck get in there? No way.
Yeah, I think we see that in the minutes from 10 years ago.
Yeah. And the fire marshal was instrumental at that time in assisting. And I mean, we've done some trainings. I actually went and listened to the state fire marshal talk about these types of cases, because this is as you know, this is happening all over the state. It's not, we're not unique. But the fire marshal their jurisdiction is inside the walls, right? Our jurisdiction is outside the walls in this case. So, there's a little bit of a difference of who's doing what and who, and who's able to enforce.
My question is, does the town have any liens on the property? Is that,
Currently, there is no liens on the
so he
property.
pays his taxes and he's up to date?
I believe that's the case. I haven't looked for a tax lien. I want to be honest. We could do that very easily. But there are no zoning liens on the property. There were some during past enforcement, but because we were able to get compliance, those liens were forgiven.
So it was cleaned up in the past?
So this is really, it's a very interesting case. Staff worked with, in the past, I want to say I can't give enough credit to the past fire marshal for this. He and the past zoning agent orchestrated a agreement with T&B Motors. And do you remember this, Vera? Yeah. T&B Motors agreed to go in and take the scrap. And he was given a fenced area, which still exists today. I saw it last week when I was doing an inspection, where he could keep items that he wanted to keep. And that was it was a great result. T&B went in, they did what they had to do. They got paid, not from the town, but by the scrap, right? That's how they were able to recoup some of their fees. So, we could look at maybe doing that again, but I need cooperation from the owner because I can't go on the property.
I think you were asking, like, what's the desired outcome here? It sounds like there's maybe some mental health considerations. That's not really my place. I don't think it's our place.
Nor is it mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is our place to enforce our regulations. And I think that there are probably mechanisms that could handle such a situation if that's unfair or undue. But I think if someone can essentially call the town's bluff and say, like, I'm not going to cooperate, and then the town doesn't do anything, we don't really have zoning regulations. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what the regulations should say. And I think if we're going to do that, like, that's all moot if we're ultimately just going to fold if someone decides not to follow them. So I also think that's unfair to people who do follow the zoning regulations. I think the entire credibility of this commission rests on the fact that zoning regulations will be followed and enforced if they're not going to be followed. And for everyone's disclosure, I live at 1926 Stores Road. That's not next door to 1925. It's like a half mile away. But my neighborhood abuts this. And my neighbors have asked me, hey, what's going on here? You're on the zoning commission. And I haven't been able to give them a good answer. All I can say is, like, this has been on the violation list for 20 years.
Why are no fines being incurred now?
So I think, when he dropped off communication, and I worked with the town attorney, I really thought the way we could expedite this was to somehow have a judge violate the permanent injunction that was entered against him the last time this was enforced. I thought that would kind of be like a fast track into court so that we could kind of go past all this warning letter, notice of violation, citation, all of that, because there is a permanent injunction on that property that he keep it in a certain condition. And it took a long time, but the ultimate answer from the town attorney was no, that I had to start again. So that's where we are today. I've written him. I'm following the procedure that we follow, whether it's 25 cars or 2 cars. we have a procedure that we follow for every zoning case. So we're starting the clock again. We'll shorten up the timeframes as much as we can to get, to move this. We just have to move it back into court. That's where we will end up.
So a permanent injunction doesn't really mean anything?
Not a problem.
Huh?
It just doesn't sound very permanent. If what we're
Exactly.
doing is repeating.
I think actually there was an issue with finding the file at Superior Court.
Oh. Oh.
So what could the commission do to help you?
I mean, I think, I can give you regular updates every 2 weeks on where we are. We have sort of a timeline already made for all of the cases, so we could present you with the timeline at every meeting of where we are in the process. It will frustrate you. I'm going to be completely honest, because there are statutory timelines that you have to wait before you can do certain things. But I can give you those updates, and we can work with the town attorney to see if there's, ironically, today I went and reviewed 12 case studies for people that want to be zoning agents, and they were, I was asked to be on this committee, and one of them was kind of a similar situation. I'm wondering if we could go in and we could just tow the cars off the property if we could ask the judge for some kind of order to let us go in and clean up the property. And if that might be faster than some of the other things that we've tried in the past. Jillian, I think ultimately then the judge would have to authorize the town to lien the property for that amount.
Right.
And at some point, we'd have to figure out when do we call that lien, and that would be something that our attorney would help us with.
So going down the normal path, then eventually you get the fines, right?
Yes.
After a judge.
You
or
get
before a judge. Before the judge, you get fines.
Mhm.
And the fines probably won't be paid, then they go to the judge.
Right, and that's where you get your lien.
Okay.
Yeah. And we saw this with a case that recently resolved. The fines can in the condition the property that is in today, the fines will outvalue that property quickly
Right, because it's $150 per day of noncompliance.
per violation.
So if you've got 25 cars, quick math here of 150 times 25
we
per
wouldn't.
day.
Yeah, we would.
But we could, right?
Well, I think that you should follow through on the process, wherever that leads. Yeah.
What's happening with the property on Browns Road with the,
Yes.
is that a?
You should, yeah,
I-
so
I-
the
well, I
property,
thought I-
the property at Browns Road, was successful enforcement. It's changed hands twice, changed ownership since that we were involved in that enforcement process. And I am in the process of approving a zoning permit to build a very modest single-family home on the property, of which the neighbors are thrilled.
Nice job.
Is there such thing as putting a lien on the property so that this person, whoever owns it, cannot turn around and sell it? Like he did.
So the lien in the past, I used to be a blight enforcement officer in another town, and I dealt with this kind of situation all the time. The point of a lien is that the town is more concerned with getting compliance whenever there's any sort of an ordinance or regulation violation. The thing we want is compliance. The town is not in the business of business. We are not in the business of extracting money from residents, right? So what you're trying to do is you've got someone, you've got their arm, And now you got to twist, and you got to twist it behind their back until they finally agree to do whatever it is you want. And if they don't, generally speaking, trying to extract that money from them in court actually helps you get what you want even less than if you had let them do whatever they wanted, because now they have less assets to fix the problem that you just asked them to fix. So what you do is the lien goes on the land record such that when that house eventually sells or it transfers in the case of death, there can be some sort of extraction in the future, because otherwise it's debt carried by an estate. And the town has the capacity to collect that at tax sale if it eventually comes to possession of the town. There's all sorts of things going on with it. But these can really add up pretty substantially. Liens are often used because the town is striking a balance between compassion of not throwing people out of their homes and the necessity of extracting true consequences for violation of regulations. There must be enforcement or there is no law. But we live in a society that, for some folks, lets them fall through the cracks. Are we willing to allow the pursuit of A to throw people out on the streets? And so liens often wind up as a compromise. Those monies do eventually get recruited in some way, but often not totally. If a property goes to tax sale, right, if we wind up taking a property because the total liens from taxes or other things accumulate above the value of the property, we're not going to get them all back, right? You're not going to be able to get somebody to give you $250,000 of fines for a property worth 50, but it's something. And something is better than nothing.
But again, in 1925, there are no liens.
Not at the moment. So the process begins again.
And the process is beginning, is what I'm hearing. The process has begun. Yeah.
You know, the other thing that we could talk about is a true blight ordinance, which may have, obviously the PZC is not the ordinance committee, but a blight ordinance may have a faster way to a resolution than using zoning in some cases.
That would be a town council decision, right?
Correct.
Presumably, we do have a blight ordinance at the town council level.
We have a housing code that talks about basically rental housing, but in terms of in the Northwest Mansfield, I don't have the statutory citation in front of me, but in the Northwest Mansfield plan, we did do some research about, you know, enacting a blight ordinance. And I think where you came from in Winchester, you had that blight ordinance. So
we don't have one at the moment.
We do not have that.
Okay.
No.
So it looks like there are maybe 8 on the junkyards on the list now. Is that correct? Are those?
So, yeah, so a junkyard, right?
Which is
can be a lot of things, which is 1925 is absolutely a junkyard. Anybody that has more than one unregistered vehicle is a junkyard.
Okay.
There are a lot. And, you know, I'm not sure, you know, what I hear from folks when I try to enforce this is they have the vehicles because they can't afford to get rid of them or register them. So I work with them to see if we can come to some resolution. But there are a lot of properties in town that qualify as a junkyard with 2 unregistered vehicles.
The ones on your list, are they ones that are more severe, like the
287 Hunting Lodge, he's got a bus that he's converting into a home that's unregistered. He's got some farm equipment. He's making progress very slowly. Let's see, what else is a junkyard? McCullum Road. That's two very neatly parked vehicles. It's a tenant that has 2 unregistered vehicles. I have a notice of violation sitting on my desk to go out to them. I sent them a warning letter. That didn't get a response. 46 Middle Turnpike, same situation. Maybe a box truck that's unregistered. You know, honestly, sometimes I can't see the plates. I can't see whether or not these vehicles have plates on them. And if it has a plate on it, I have one situation where the plate just keeps moving from vehicle to vehicle. So even if it has a plate on it, it doesn't mean it's registered. So I'm also dealing with that issue as well.
How many properties in town at a given time would qualify as blighted?
Since we don't have a blight ordinance,
I
not
know, but would fit into that.
a junkyard, a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It-
but it sounds like,
It's way more than you'd think.
okay,
It's way more people across the economic spectrum than you might expect. And it really, really depends on how you write the blight ordinance and who's complaining and who's enforcing, because blight is way more subjective than zoning. Example, I had some folks who would come to me if their neighbor's lawn got longer than 3 inches in length. And they asked me to go out, and they'd call every day. I had some people who came to me because there was a hole in the wall of their neighbor's house and there were rats. But those are equal numbers of complaints that I got, because it's really, really dependent. And the complaint, of course, we know is not necessarily an enforcement action. Our department says that all the time, but blight is really subjective.
538 Mansfield City Road. I don't know if anybody drives by that often. That's kind of a sad situation. But I have made contact with her, and I am working with the health department on that one as well. They are trying to gain access to the interior of that home based on the condition of the exterior. 481 Stafford Road, that's maybe a plate keeps going from car to car. 486 Stafford Road is a serious situation. So there's a lot. I do not, but I do not go on the property. I am not allowed. I do everything from the road, and which sometimes is also not safe. So a lot of times when Michael and I are on inspections, we may be at McDonald's one day looking at stormwater, and then I say, well, we have to go here, 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 and here, because it's much easier when someone else is driving. A lot of these properties are on corners or at intersections. It's not really safe to pull over a lot of times. So we do a lot of this together.
So it sounds like last time there were liens in place that then ultimately got forgiven. Is that something that's like done in the discretion of the town after we got it to compliance? But next time that could stand potentially as a deterrent?
Yeah, I don't know whether the court dismissed the liens. I would guess they would do that at the request of the town, though.
Yeah, that's what happened with the property on Browns Road, where they cleaned it up and we went to the court and we said, you can dismiss those liens.
Okay, thanks.
So
Other discussion?
yes, so I guess, would you like us to go, so we had more of a discussion than we thought we were going to have tonight, which is fine. But would you like us, would you like us to review the statute 10 minutes at the next meeting? And then just so we can understand that, and we can all, I think it's important for you all, if you're seeing something that we're not doing, it's, I'm glad you brought it up, and we can, because we do want to make sure that our zoning regulations are just sort of empty promises or empty, whatever they are, because otherwise what is the point of doing all of this work? However, enforcement it's complicated. And so we're happy to discuss that with you.
You had asked
previously, Jolene, would we like updates on 1925? I think I don't want to be heavyweight here. But yeah, I think maybe a monthly update is like, where is this in the process? That would be helpful, just because it's sat for so long.
Okay, so,
Mr. Chair, Banu has a
yes.
question.
Oh,
Binu.
Binu, yes.
Yeah, so I was wondering, I know Michael has some examples from his past role in his past job. When we do this research, can we look at what other towns do to handle these situations? There may be some towns having similar issues and may have already, you know, come to a resolution.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good point. Yeah. Okay, I think the last item we have is our old business, right? Which was the zoning map.
No, explicitly, it's the future land
Future.
use map.
Future
And
land
we'll
use,
we'll
yes.
start with the discussion on that.
Okay.
But let's really make it clear that this is a policy map. It is not your zoning map. This map is what is going to help you create your zoning map, your zoning districts, as well as the regulations. But it is a very high level policy map and designations that are meant to be put into the plan of conservation and development when this goes to adoption. So for those of you who were not at the last meeting, Michael had done a very thorough explanation of this future land use map and the future land use designations, and he is going to review that again and then talk about where we're landing and where we're going with the draft future land use map for the plan of conservation and development.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we've got everyone here today, which is delightful, and a bunch of people who weren't on the commission last meeting. So it's a perfect time to talk about the future land use map, what it is, and then because we received a pretty warm reception for the ideas that we presented at the previous meeting, we went ahead and attempted to apply those ideas to the future land use map. And so we have a draft future land use map to show you today, labeling the major changes that we're proposing making in the town's future direction as mapped, because a lot of the changes are not substantial changes for the town's direction. So to go over this again, let me go into presentation mode. It'll look just a little bit more formal. This is the town's future land use map. It is, in many ways, this is the primary product that comes out of the plan of conservation and development. It is directing folks who read this plan on how to think about the town using its space for the following 10 years. It synthesizes your natural and cultural resources, your existing infrastructure, your goals for economic development and preservation. Now, the town breaks this map up into two major groupings of different land use classifications. We have rural conservation areas, which are primarily low density, primarily focused on keeping your natural landscape, your agriculture, your historic resources. And that is an area that makes up most of town. If you look at those, that's your taupe, your green, your yellow. The majority of the town's map is supposed to be relatively low density. And instead, what we want to do with density is we want to cluster it in areas where we have existing infrastructure. We want to intensify uses in those places where we already have a diversity of commercial uses, lots of folks living there already. When you group lots of uses together, you start getting synergies, you start getting essentially bonuses for density that allow you to build up more infrastructure more efficiently and support things. And so prioritizing those locations means that we have grouped our major smart growth areas into two parts of town, immediately on the border with Wyndham in the south kind of bleeding into the majority of Willimantic and around UConn's campus. Now, in staff's view, this setup, which was made in 2015, has some things that are working quite well and some things that we think could be better, right? We are definitely developing medium and high density housing stock. That was a goal in 2015, was to develop medium and high density housing stock and keep it in the smart growth areas. And we are doing that. The standard is a very large testament to the fact that high density housing has been built. But we have a diversity of that type too, because Eagleville Green has also come in as medium density housing stock that helps meet affordable housing goals. The plan is directing growth where we want it, and it's keeping growth out of areas that we think are really high importance for conservation. But the thing is, it's not driving a particularly large amount of community diversity in housing or in jobs or in people. We're not getting starter homes, 1,400 to 1,600 square feet for young families or working professionals or older families who want to downsize, right? You don't want to keep up your 2,800 square foot house with 2 acres of lawn anymore. But you want to stay in town because that's where all the people who you love, who your friends are with, right? We don't have a lot of opportunities for those folks. Because so many local jobs and housing stock depend on the existence of the University of Connecticut, it like a star, it warps the gravity of everything around it. Things get trapped in the orbit of UConn. That's not a bad thing, right? UConn's existence makes Mansfield what it is, but it does mean that people are coming here for UConn, and whether that's an enormous number of students or professors with professorial salaries, that the specific needs of UConn drive the local economy. So that can make the town a little bit vulnerable and can leave gaps in what the types of people we would like to do in a complex economic community, right? So what do we like to see for Mansfield to grow in a way that is smart, healthy, resilient? We would like to keep the smart growth areas. We think that they are working, but we would also like to promote diverse housing and jobs for people at different stages of their life. We want to continue to protect Mansfield's natural resource areas. And we want to clarify a few things about this map. Because there are things that we think don't work very well on this map. And we ran over these last week, but just to keep running through. There is a concept in urban planning of a rural to urban spectrum, right? All places, when you think about land use from a human standpoint, all landscapes fall somewhere between totally undisturbed wilderness and downtown Manhattan. There's no place on the planet that isn't somewhere on that spectrum. So when you are planning for your land uses, you have to think about what is going next to each other and how that transitions between them. Ideally, you want a community that has spectrums of them. And generally, you want to not jump drastically between your levels of development. It starts to feel disjointed. Although there are things to be said for if you're in downtown Manhattan, you are right next to Central Park. In general, you want to have eased transitions between landscapes with some set-asides of undeveloped land. One of the things that we did as we were looking at the future land use map was we started to look at where do our current land use patterns, our future land use designations or floods, where do they fall on this spectrum, right? How intense do we expect things to be? The kinds of homes, the kinds of economic activity. Again, we're not prescribing anything. We're not saying offices here, businesses here, mixed commercial here, lot sizes we don't care about. All we're thinking about right now is the general feel of your community. And we noted that we have a few land use designations that fall within the rural context, and we have a series of gradations in that urban to urban center zone that get kind of granular as we're trying to specifically focus on our smart growth development. But what we have in the area between some small lot single family homes and 100-acre farms is one thing. and it's the rural residential agricultural forestry land use designation. And that captures undisturbed forest, well-cultivated farm field, grazing pasture, 2-acre subdivisions, 1-acre subdivisions, half-acre subdivisions, random splits from 1920. It's all in there. It's all in there. Now, some of those that come out of our kind of historical patterns of like our villages, those are captured in our village districts and our village centers down in Mansfield Center or Mansfield Depot, right? But most stuff is just one place. And that isn't very useful for planning. If this is a planning map and we're thinking about where we should try to encourage certain types of development, you're going to create a lot of you're going to come to loggerheads with your own planning initiatives when you go, what goes here? What do we want to promote here? There's always some degree of lots of things go in an area. Lots of things can be appropriate for an intensity. But if you say everything is as appropriate, from a gigantic agricultural farm to a bunch of lots all stacked up next to each other, and there should be nothing called out on the map that says these shouldn't be interspersed, you can start to run into issues. What we think makes sense is to refine this map and to say that rural agricultural residential is really a rural zone that should be focused on your farms and your forestry and large lots with houses kind of out in the wilderness. And then to create a new land use designation that targets specifically small to medium-sized lots in subdivisions. We refer to this as neighborhood residential. Now, neighborhood residential can be any number of things, but the primary kinds of things you'd see in there are freestanding, often houses, not necessarily all residential, but often houses, single or two-family structures. Near pedestrian infrastructure, but not necessarily on sewer and water. Not necessarily interspersed with open acres of farm or field, right? Now, the thing about this and why we think this is so appropriate is because there's a lot of these already in Mansfield. Just to run through some of these quickly, Michelle Lane, Adeline Place, down at the south end of town, these are about half-acre lots. This is exactly like the lot I grew up on down in Waterford. You've got some nice colonials built in the 80s, plenty of lawn to run around in, backing up next to each other. You've also got Circle Drive. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit less wooded. As you drive by, you're looking at smaller ranch-style houses, right? Open air, a lot less trees. That's only 0.3-acre lots, right? These are pretty small lots. On Eastwood Westwood, Mr. Chair, I don't think it's your house in the picture, but you have a diversity of housing types, right? You've got a cape, you've got a raised ranch. There's lots of different types of housing you can have here. They have different setbacks from the road, right? We are not talking specifically about setbacks here. We're just talking about what does it feel like when you're walking down the street. Finally, Birchwood Heights, about 0.9 acres on these lots, much more separated from each other. This feels a little bit more private. Right? There's more vegetation. Things are just a little bit more spread out. It's more set back. But what's going on in all of these places is that you are seeing clusters of these houses on infrastructure across streets. Now, other things we did, we were looking at combining, as we were coming up with these areas, we also figured we would do a pass in the Northwest Mansfield plan of trying to refine what compact residential is versus compact residential transitional. Compact residential is a really dense zone, the transition a little bit less so. And then since we're adding these neighborhood residential zones, trying to transit that transitional buffer between them. The neighborhood residential area applies to a lot of areas that kind of already have this pattern of development and where we think it makes sense to keep doing them. Now, there's a couple other things we want to talk about real quick. And if anyone has any questions, you are please feel free to stop me at any time. I'm a motor mouth. I'll just keep talking if you don't. Talking about our smart growth areas, one of the things that we do with our smart growth areas is that we are trying to direct growth to areas that have existing employment, public transportation, public water and sewer. These are not the only places where business happens in the town, far from it, right? Lots of people run businesses out of their homes. Lots of people have smaller offices. There's lots of small commercial areas interspersed throughout the town that are not in these two core areas. In general, these are grouped into two areas in town, village center and rural commercial. Now, rural commercial is down by Perkins Corner mostly, but there's a couple other spots that's scattered. Village center tends to be in our existing historic villages. And we took a look at this because these are areas where we think it makes sense to try to do some infill development. We want to do development that's in harmony with what's there. We want to help these places grow. People love Mansfield Center. We've seen some wonderful things go on there of late with the general store, which has seen a huge renovation. People love to comment in our office about how great that looks. People have a lot of vested feelings in seeing these historic villages thrive, right? They mean a lot to a lot of people. They're one of the things that people love about this town. So how do we help them do that? Well, what are they, right? They're a place, and that's an important thing. They are a destination with a sense of identity because they exist within these villages. In the uses they allow, you tend to look at offices, right? You'll see some restaurants, a couple of small shops. They do not allow light industry, although put a pin in that because we're going to get back to that. They're supposed to be places that are doing moderately intense development. Rural commercial. This is called out in the plan for auto-oriented commercial development, as opposed to having been historic villages where your structures are right on the road, built on walking, and then later adapted for the automobile revolution. Rural commercial was built with them in mind. You've got a lot of entertainment uses in them, construction, offices, fewer restaurants, but none, that allow light industry. Now, why am I harping on light industry? Well, because both of these they're really not that different. They're mixed use areas for commerce, relatively low intensity. One is hypothetically car-centric, one is hypothetically historic, but you need a car to get to these pretty much anyway. You're going to have car-oriented development in the village centers, and there are historic villages in our rural commercial areas. So what the difference really is when we come down to what these look like in our regulations is that one of these you can do light industry in, and one of them you can't.
Not our regulations in
the future plan,
Yeah.
in the
Right.
Plan of Conservation
Yeah.
Development from 2015, right? So what is light industry? What did we call out as light industry? What is this concept of economic activity and use patterns? Well, light industry can be a lot of things. Limited assembly and production is the critical idea behind it when we defined it in the 2015 plan. And we gave a lot of things it could be. You could do food packaging or paper making or 3D printing. You could do medical supply manufacturing, right? And you can often do these things critically in places where you don't need to majorly disrupt your neighborhood because you don't have a huge amount of traffic being generated. You can fit into existing buildings and reuse space adaptively. And because of that, they offer ways to expand economy and bring jobs into an area without majorly disrupting the pattern of land use that exists in an area. Now, our current definition of light industry includes warehousing. Staff is of the opinion that 2014, when this plan was being written, warehousing was a slightly different concept from the Amazon revolution that hit us all in an unfolding wave, but really kind of took off around COVID. Warehousing, the big warehouses that are being built are obviously of a different scale than the kinds of uses and the needed floor spaces that we think of with most of these other light industry uses. We think that it makes a lot of sense to separate those out. But if you do separate those out and you say warehousing is its own thing, well, the things that light industry entails are already happening in different places in town and have already happened in both of these areas, in both village centers and rural commercial areas. It's happened in both already. At 216 Stafford Road, and that building, what was there, Jillian, Jennifer? What was the...
At the Grange, the former Grange, there was and Glisten Diamonds, there was a manufacturing, a diamond manufacturing that they were using the diamonds for not jewelry, but for other uses.
So you've already got certain uses which are commercial and generative. You're making something, you're doing industry, and they're already going into these places. The big thing is that you have to be very form critical, right? You want to integrate into the existing landscape. You want it to feel a certain way. But that doesn't mean that the use couldn't happen. It just means it has to be considerate of what's already there. And if you buy that argument, because I am making an argument here, there's not a whole lot that distinguishes these places. They are kind of functionally similar. And if they're pretty functionally similar, then we don't need two definitions for these. We should merge them down and promote light industry in both places as a way to encourage economic development, as a future pattern of land use that makes sense in these parts of town. Okay. Last thing, institutional. So if we just jump back real quick, you're going to see, if we just go to this map, there's some big purple splotches on this map that the astute observer would note are the University of Connecticut. Mostly. Because the institutional flood is used as a catch-all in the plan. It's saying it's the university. And because we as a town can't tell the state what they must do, and UConn is an arm of the state, they don't have to listen to us. They don't have to follow our regulations. So we don't have any say over what they do. But it's important to note that a future land use map is not a regulatory map. We are not doing regulating right now. We are setting out our vision as a town for what the town should look like in the future, in general. What does it make sense to do? And we, in some ways, punted on that question because it's owned by the state. Other parts of this map that are owned by the state are also in purple. The highway around Route 6, that's 6, right? But then we also included a bunch of other random things in institutional. We included Willimantic Waterworks. We included some of the town schools, but not all of them. We included the Public Works Garage. We included E.O. Smith High School and its ball fields, which is an interesting choice. We included Town Hall. Not the town library, not the new elementary school, not some of the old elementary schools. So institutional didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was a catch-all for UConn and then other stuff. And that's actually not a very useful way to plan. As I noted with the first thing we talked about, if you have a catch-all category, not a great way to plan. So what we're proposing is that we should really narrow down institutional to specifically be about UConn's core campus. Institutional represents that level of high density and educational use that UConn does on its core campus. Other places, regardless of whether or not we can regulate them, that's a question for zoning. This isn't a regulation map. This is a goals map for the community. This is our aspirations. Other areas, we will weigh in on what it makes sense for them to look like. And we're not going to just put it into the blob of institutional that we're not really describing what it does. That was what we presented last time. That's the rundown. I'm incapable of speaking quickly. So that is the rundown. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to go over them. Otherwise, we can jump into, because that received a pretty warm reception last time, what we're proposing changing on the future land use map for 2025. All right. I'm going to assume you're all very engaged and enjoying this presentation. So the town, we're really just focusing on the Northwest and the South because the easternmost parts of town, once you're kind of over the Fenton River, it's very, very rural, and we're not changing anything on the map other than those parcels that have gone into permanent protected status will now be reflected as conservation land on this map. So there's 4 major things that we're changing here, and I'm going to show you a before and after in a second. So first, where are we adding neighborhood residential? We think neighborhood residential, some of the recommendations for neighborhood residential were in the Northwest Mansfield plan, and then we expanded the concept to go over the rest of town. We've added it immediately in the small neighborhoods around UConn to the south, as well as the complex Timber Drive up in the north. Both of these areas are currently kind of acknowledged to be developed in a different pattern. They used to be zoned R40 and that they had a specific zoning for smaller lots than other parts of the town, other than R20s. But that was upzoned at one point to R90. There was a whole back and forth on protection. We think that regardless of whether or not we fight over how big the lots are, this acknowledges that this land is and has been developed as a specific pattern of use, and that is for medium density neighborhoods that have sidewalk infrastructure and are close to an university. And it makes sense that we want to keep them that way. They're pretty good at what they do. People like living there. That logic extends to other parts of town too. It extends to Rolling Hills, which people might think of as more compact residential, but really it's a neighborhood. It's a neighborhood where people are residing, and it is mostly, although the lot structure is a little bit different because of how a manufactured home works versus a single family home on its individual lot, it's kind of the same thing. South of that, we have Monticello, Birch, Maple Road, Felon. All of these lots were developed as subdivision lots, and they're kind of interwoven with each other. They were put in a big sidewalk eventually when they finish reading the wetlands report with me. That's supposed to go along Maple Road, improving pedestrian infrastructure, linking these places to each other, making it more feel like a neighborhood. Other things we're doing, revising the institutional zone. We're going to take those town-owned or E.O. Smith lots. We're going to pull those out of the institutional zone. We're going to kind of continue to, we propose continuing to integrate those with the stores downtown, and continuing that kind of pattern of development that exists in stores downtown may be appropriate on these lands. Municipal uses can go anywhere. So when we're talking about what may be appropriate on these lands, we're still up in the air with where exactly a new town hall may go. Staff is not making any suggestions about that at this time. But additionally, we're talking about Depot Campus. Now, Depot Campus is a totally different pattern of development than UConn's main campus. Anyone who drives through those two areas would tell you they do not look the same. They were developed at different times. They had different uses. They feel different to go through. And we don't think it would necessarily be appropriate to bring UConn's main center campus hub level of intensity and activity out to Depot Campus. It serves a different role. If additional housing or classes or economic activity goes on out there, it makes sense to be a slightly lower level of infrastructure development because it's not in the middle of everything. It's kind of in the middle of a bunch of farms. Now, UConn doesn't have to listen to us, as always, but we're just weighing in. We think it's important in our relationship with UConn to tell them what we think. And that way, when they ask us, when they send out one of those questions that they're proposing to do an activity and the town gets to weigh in, we have something to fall back on to tell them, well, we think that this makes sense. Because if we don't, we're just going to say, well, it's an institution. You guys do what you want. We're merging rural commercial and village center in these areas where we have a couple of those lots, and we're refining the edges of compact residential and compact residential transitional. If you are thinking that this map looks a little bit like I drew on this in crayon, there is a degree of that, but I actually do want to talk about the point of this is not necessarily to always follow lot lines, right? Lot lines, setbacks, again, zoning. We are talking about areas of town, general parts of the area, parts of your community. We're painting with a little broader brush. We don't necessarily have to follow your lot lines when we're doing this. We'll talk about zones later. So we look at what's changed. We'll note, one thing staff will note is that we are going to do a little bit of sculpting on this after we're done. We don't have the flood zones on here yet. It's practice to keep intense development out of flood zones because it's a bad idea. So if there's high intensity areas that are currently noted in areas where we overlay the flood zone, those will get pulled out. Same with aquifer areas, developed aquifer areas, we try to protect those. What you can see is that a lot stays the same. We've gone to a bit more compact residential transitional. Neighborhood residential fills in a lot of areas that used to just be rural residential. But overall, we're not expanding those smart growth areas. We tend to keep things where they are. We're just refining the map a little bit. In the south, We've got some additional neighborhood residential areas planned, a couple of those blocks I called out before. The area to the south of Perkins Corner was actually in the 2015 plan called out as not being a historic village, but having a pattern of development similar to it and thus warranting rural residential village, which is a fancy way to say that's neighborhood residential and they didn't create the concept at the time. So we're taking the step and doing it now. Revising the institutional zone. We've pulled the state highway land, the land immediately around the state highway, out of institutional. We think that it makes a ton of sense for that to be developed in some way to be more intense. If you're going to put a warehouse anywhere in town, it should go there. Immediate highway access, state-owned land. You can intensify that very well. It's got huge infrastructure capacity. Makes a lot of sense to do there. Wind and waterworks. We, again, not institutional, keeping it in harmony with the other things around there. That would be mixed use transitional. Merging the rural commercial areas. And then we've got a lot of new conserved or managed resource land down in this part of town. Some that's been purchased by the town, some that has become conservation easements on agricultural land. So that's all marked out here. There's a couple other small changes that I could go through, but I have already been talking for a while. These are the big ideas. And this is the general map that we're thinking of. We would love to hear your thoughts if you have any questions about what's going on with this area. You have investment in something that you really want to make sure that we're doing credence to. Please let us know. Yeah, Josh.
Can you remind me what I think you called it taupe color is?
Yeah. So the light beige or taupe that makes up, that's kind of the default in town. That is rural, residential, agricultural, forestry. So that is land use type that you would, it's the I'm driving through Connecticut and I don't feel like I am in a town or a village. I am in the woodland of Connecticut. That most often would be rural, residential, agricultural, forestry. You'll find big farms in this, right? We've got, with the exception of the Stearns Farm, which is now primarily preserved because it has an agricultural easement on it. That would all be, were it not that land use development. Most of the land east of the Fenton River is in this because it is large lots or lots of trees. But you can also have some subdivisions in here with larger 2-acre lots and things like that. It has a lot of catch-all categories.
Thanks. You have listed there new conserved land. I think you said you're going to create new conservation easements. How do you do that? I assume that the land is owned. How do you create a new easement on property that's already owned by somebody?
So this is marking, this is the one land use designation that we put on this map that is not future facing, but is actually logging what exists. These are areas that are currently managed for resources or already in conservation protection. The town as policy does not try to put its thumb on the scale for any sort of real estate transaction or property valuation, right? We don't set with our planning documents, we try not to say, oh, well, that land should be conserved before somebody comes in with a proposal for it, because then have we already ruled that you can't develop your land? Are we already going to say your application doesn't make sense? So as much as is possible in a planning document, we try not to restrict people. Delicate balancing act, I admit. So there are no conservation easements planned on this map. The change to the Stearns Farm is because in
period of 5 years or so, but until like about 2018, we were preserving the Stearns Farm, that area where 4 is.
So they've received and have entered into a conservation easement with the state and have agreed to, they've sold development rights to their land. They have agreed to do it. And now we are logging that it is preserved on this map. Yes, it's the big area in 4. If we look at the difference here, right, this area here did not used to be conservation land, but now that it has been put into conservation, we are noting that on the future land use map that we see no reason to argue with that. Yeah, it's a lot to digest, which is why we've done this for now 2 meetings. And if you have more thoughts, please let us know.
So this is sort of where where we're heading. This still has to go out to the public and they have to weigh in on this. But we need you to weigh in, and you probably need to digest this a little bit more, especially the changes. If you go back to 2006 and then you go to then 2015, and you're not going to see too much of a difference. Can you bring up the first the map where you have all those circles where we're making changes, so you can sort of see there? I mean, that if you look at the area, the darkly shade, the areas that are more that are darker, the red, the brown, those are consistent where our the sewer service areas are and where we have public water. So, and that's been planned for a long time. And so that's really not changed. What's really changed, and I think it's really nuanced, I don't even know that we have to spend a ton more time talking about it, is that the combination of rural, commercial, and village. I think that makes sense. I think we probably have too many of these designations to begin with. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. But then it's the neighborhood residential, adding that, which is it's more of a smaller lot, single family with some duplexes, because we know that we need more housing in the state and in this town. And we need more housing for families, for seniors, for working professionals, for people to kind of really invest in our community. And that's our try at trying to plan for that. And then also things like the Depot campus, I don't think the Depot campus, I think someday that is going to be redeveloped. And I think it most likely is going to have to be done with a public-private partnership. I don't know, but if not, that's fine. It will remain institutional, and we'll go through the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act, that process where we can provide input. But at least maybe if we can kind of talk about some things that we'd like to see. I mean, if we do change that to mixed use center transitional, that would align with a lot of the university uses as well. So I don't think that's much of a conflict. So it's a lot of words that we've talked about, but it's not a ton of changes, I would say. And what we've heard from the surveys that we've done for the plan of conservation and development is that people want us to direct development to our smart growth areas, and they want to see sort of our low density areas, the places where we are protecting our watershed, our water resources, our interior forest tracts. They want to see that protected, so that people like the balance in Mansfield, is what we've heard. And I think probably you all sitting at this table know that.
Because we have time, right? So one of the reasons we brought this to you is because since this is kind of in many ways, the culmination of the plan, we want to make sure that we're going in a direction that you all feel comfortable with when we are writing this chapter. So if there are specific things and you want time to reflect, or you want to schedule a sit down with staff at some point to go over things, make sure you feel confident about what we're talking about, that's totally reasonable. If no one sees anything glaring that says absolutely not, you are going in the wrong direction, I don't like that map, we will begin writing with this map as the basis, and there's plenty of time to change it later. We do have time. We're still moving through the process, and these go through lots of revisions. So just let us know as soon as possible.
And I think it would be helpful because we've looked at this in pieces, sections of the town, but to actually see the 2015 future land use map right next to the whole town, not just this portion, so you can really see what the changes are.
Yep.
Readily available.
All of this is available on request. But again, I have in some ways been drawing in crayon, so it doesn't look great on the back end. I will now, if people think this is preliminarily decent, I will now draft up a good looking version and make it available to everyone.
Sounds like a good plan.
I actually have a question. So as commissioners may recall, the planned housing design district hinges on, in the RAR 90 zone, whether or not you can have a multiplex, hinges on whether or not it's designated as compact residential on the future land use map. So my question is there any expanded area where this would be allowed in the new map?
We have not expanded compact residential or compact residential transitional to any new lots. Any changes in the compact residential have made it CRT, but compact residential itself has expanded in exactly one lot, which is, if you look right here, you will see a tiny splotch of green and not here. And that is a town-owned parcel that is not conserved, that the town owns in the middle of a compact residential area that we can't find any evidence of conservation status. It was just a 1961 acquisition by the town. We're still looking into whether or not there's any reason it wouldn't be a perfect place to really put some houses, because it certainly looks at first glance as a great place to put some housing.
Orchard Acres off of Shepherdess Road.
Town owns Orchard Acres?
No, we own a 1.1 acre parcel within Orchard Acres. And that is a town road. So it fronts on a town road. And if
It's at the beginning of that road?
No, it's right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle.
Again, everything about this lot is confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Robert, you had a question?
I was just gonna ask how many acres.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, not large.
Can I ask the same, I think it's the same question differently though, to make sure I'm understanding it. So this is a planning map where we're trying to indicate where we think the kinds of uses we want to be are located. But what I think I heard is we mostly just, what's the word I'm looking for? The existing, the neighborhoods that we've marked in these new ways basically already were structured in that way or laid out in that way. And we're not necessarily extending it to any other areas that were not already pre-existing that way.
We're not being particularly controversial with it. No, we're saying, in some ways, we're saying this pattern of development is appropriate, right? Because if we're looking at a future land use map and it's the future land use map says that this area should be RAR, and it's a whole bunch of small houses, are we saying that's not appropriate? We want to turn those back into larger lots, and we want to see, hypothetically, 30 years down the road, knock down half those houses, let the trees regrow? No, we think it's appropriate. But what we are saying is that in those areas, right, if we want to draft regulations that allow us to incentivize more duplexes, like increase intensity, increase the things that create that neighborhood feel, increase pedestrian infrastructure, that makes sense. There are a few larger lots clustered in with these that are undeveloped at this time. So that would be, if you were going to develop that, right, you were going to regulate and put in new zones, then we would say, we think that this is an appropriate form for that.
Most of those new areas, the aqua areas also, they don't have water and sewer.
So you can't go too intense.
There is a little, if we go down to Southern Mansfield, you'll see that some areas
right along here.
Yeah.
These two could, and I think,
but they're essentially developed. So the areas where we have where we're planning for intense development have water and sewer.
Or couldn't we just go back to the last map for one sec? Sorry, the one more that shows the depot campus. Yep. And I'm not even saying it's appropriate for this map, but let's say 10 years from now, when we're doing this again, there's a plan for the depot campus. would it make sense? Like you could see potentially highlighting some of the areas around the Depot campus in that turquoise blue color if we wanted to encourage that type of development in that area.
I mean, you'd have to balance that with preserve farmland.
Yep.
And those things. Yeah. But I mean, we have a working farm and that's something that people value too. So
Yeah.
we'd
No,
have to,
it's just
it's all a balance.
the former lawyer and me, I have to just talk it through to.
Oh, that's what we definitely,
It's a moving target for what we think it makes sense for our community to be moving to in the future. And that will change as new information comes out.
So what kind of option does this give us to develop more housing of the?
As proposed, right? From a planning standpoint, what the map revisions say is that there should be fewer areas, fewer of the lots that used to be labeled for compact residential exist. And most of them have gone to compact residential transitional. That means fewer townhouse set apartments, more triplexes or cluster cottages. We've increased the number of neighborhood residential from 0 to a lot. And so in those areas,
renaming.
well, it's a renaming, but it's also a tacit acknowledgement of duplexes, right? So as opposed to all of these should be single families, right? Let's move to duplexes. We could say triplexes, right? That we were thinking primarily duplexes. But so we're going to smaller lots with a little bit of intensity increases, some intensity decreases on some other lots. Particularly, one of the things that we heard the most in the Northwest Mansfield plan was people felt like all of the development is being absorbed by just a couple spots in town there. And while they are within the smart growth areas, and that is something that the town has been planning to do for 20 years, we would like to lessen the burden on those streets for a little while, see how things are going. Always good to be able to understand, and you need time and data to figure out what's going on with that.
I think introducing a diversity of housing type in that area. Right now, it's very bifurcated, right? You've got apartment complexes and many of them, or large lot single family homes. And there's really not much in between.
Middle housing.
Middle housing.
Question?
Yes. Yeah, sure.
So in the proposed map, and we have a very involved and active community, did you, which is a good thing,
A very good thing.
did you maybe in certain areas identify spots where might be a bit controversial for some folks?
Well, we did go through this very thoroughly with the Northwest Mansfield Vision and Strategy Plan. So that
This area
right, and
has
those are
been extensively studied.
right. The area south of that area of Maple Road, Davis Road, that we have not, that's going to go through the public involvement process through this. I mean, people are going to learn about this, and they will say this is fine. Most of these are subdivisions. I'm not sure if there can be additional development, but it's kind of already that form of development. So we thought we would just name it. So we'll find out what people hear. What people say, rather. We will hear what people say.
Do you have an area that you think is controversial that you'd like
I'd
to
have
bring?
to study further.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now it's time to tell us. This is, we're just trying to, we're trying to see what might make sense. We know, and we're ready that people may not like it, and we'll address that, right? So.
If I were going to guess, the Hunting Lodge Road adjustment will be controversial.
That was already vetted through the Northwest Mansfield Plan. That was already, let me
Got a
see.
lot of feedback about that
We
area
did, yep,
already.
yep.
So Hunting Lodge Road, that is going to run right through here.
So that's the hill, so the change that we made is actually adding a little bit, trying, if we could, add a little bit more housing diversity so that we're not getting, say, another standard on Hunting Lodge Road, but we're getting maybe the smaller, we understand multifamily is probably appropriate there, but more smaller forms. And then acknowledging that there are neighborhoods there that are already kind of fully developed, and so
And they're a good thing.
yeah.
The people love them. We love them. They should be there. Yeah. But, you know, there is a lot of back and forth in this area on, you know, we're balancing, this map is a balance of your natural resources, your infrastructure, the sewer, the water pipeline growth limitation overlay in this area is complicated, to say the least. So whether you have access to water and sewer is very complicated because of where lots reach and where we said it can't go. There are existing potential environmental impacts. We're right next to the university. There are some interesting vernal pools and wetland systems in here. And while those are not mapped on this map, and they do not define whether development is appropriate in an area generally, if you know there is a large complex system, it may make sense to just say, we'll want to expect development to be a little bit less intense here. So all of that played into this area, which was kind of a much larger dark brown, a lot more light brown going in here, which is just a little bit less intense.
And if you recall, if you go onto our GIS and you look at where the water pipe, what is now called the water pipeline overlay zone, but we need to fix it on the map to be the water pipeline growth limitation zone, you will see that I think this layout sort of identifies, it makes it more consistent, because that's dictated by DEEP, our diversion permit. So, or Connecticut Water's diversion permit, rather. Maybe it's ours. Yeah.
And then I guess up there at the top where it turns teal, is that Timber Drive?
Yes, that's correct. So that's the other area that's currently R90, which is, again, that's explicitly a residential, not a rural agricultural residential zone. It was developed differently. It's those clusters of houses in more subdivisions. Along the frontage of that road, all of that winds up being a mixed-use center transitional, because we've got the big mixed-use center zone across the street, and there are existing businesses or municipal uses in this area, and we think that wherever possible, we need to try to step that down, and it is pretty drastic. So just trying to rapidly reduce elevation as you go across the street.
There's a humongous flood hazard zone that goes right next to
This is basically one big swamp. So we're actually still going back and forth on how to color this one. But
yep. So we did pull just up in Northwest Mansfield. We pulled back. There was a mixed use transitional area that was east of Cumberland Farms, and a little bit more east, but that was pulled back because there is a big wetland system. So if that were to be sort of redeveloped, kind of buffering that single family home that's already on the neighborhood, that single family neighborhood.
Because it may make more sense, right? We're not talking about lots. We're trying, to the best of our knowledge, to think about this as, okay, ignore lots, ignore ownership. Where does it make sense for these kinds of things to go? And if it makes more sense for an area that is developable to be kind of joined with an existing neighborhood network, ignoring issues of ownership, right? Let's paint it the way it makes sense on the map. Now, it does not always play out that way when it comes time to actually build things, but that's the idea.
So with all of those caveats and with Jennifer's caveats as well of it's a balance, I think my initial feedback, which I said I was going to dig in a lot more after the last meeting, and I did not do, so I will digest further, but I just think it would be if there are some taupe areas in areas that could be turquoise, that makes sense. I just think that we should think really closely about that, and definitely not in a position right now to be like, that's the spot on the map that should be turquoise, but just while we're doing this, and if we're talking about 10 years out, I think that would just be the one thing I would offer right now.
It's a lot. I'll let you think about it.
Thank you. This is good. This is, again,
Jennifer, it may be following up on what Vera asked. Is this available online for us to look at?
So right now, no, because it was such a working document, I
Okay.
didn't have a version that you could easily work with. What I'm going to do now is this is when I say crayon, I'm literally drawing on this in paint. Now I am going to go edit the information in GIS and make a version that people can easily pan around and has the data in a workable shape. So when I have that available for people to look at, which will probably be early next week, I will make it available to everyone.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to look at the map, like look at the before, and then we need to put the flood hazard. We've got a few sensitive soil classifications that we need to put on there. Then we need to do a better job of fleshing out those future land use designations. So you understand, when we say neighborhood residential, what you really, adding a few more pictures of what we're thinking about. So, and a better description. So.
Yes. So what we want to do is we want to put the flood zone and the sensitive aquifers layer on this map as well. And then the thing about wetlands as a layer is that as a layer, it's not mapped very well. Wetlands are kind of hard to tell if they're there from the air. If you have a picture, you can tell if they're definitely present, but you can't tell if they're definitely not present. And so our wetlands, there's a lot of surprise wetlands. I can look at a map and go, yes, that's obviously a wetland, but I can't say that's obviously not a wetland a lot of the time. And so there's a lot of surprise wetlands, which is why it can be hard to plan specifically around wetland systems that don't have other like hydraulic characteristics, which define them, like aquifers, which are well mapped, or your flood zone, right? So that's why they're not influencing us too much. Not to say that they aren't, but
They are influencing us. However, you have to remember that they are regulated, and that you are going to be, anytime there's a development coming in, you are going to be, the Inland Wetlands Agency is going to be regulating those, and you're going to be looking at them very carefully. So I think that there's pretty much every a wetland on every many properties.
If you want to give me a line item in the budget to just map wetlands, that's great. I will tell you how much I need a year. You can go lobby the town council. It's a lot of money for a lot of years.
I wanted to, this is one other final thing before I forget, that in your regulations, the Planned Housing Design District, when someone comes in and they want to do a development, they have to look at the developable area. So already that's part of your regulation. You're saying if you have 5 acres and you're going to land the Planned Housing Design District, and you say you can get 8 units per acre of a duplex, well, if 95% of your property is wetlands, you have to pull that out, or steep slope. So we're already looking at that. We have to kind of keep this as like high level. And Michael said, it's vibes. This is a vibes map.
As the kids say,
you're going with the vibe, and the regulation is not a vibe at all. It's very, very direct.
I like the specificity of the new one. I feel like it gives you a much better sense of what really is where.
Yeah.
I think the turquoise helps a lot.
Tim, do you have?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I'd asked about the Northwest plan.
Oh.
Is it available?
Oh, yes, that is online.
And
So I can just
online and
Okay.
email me, and I can just send you the link. But I'm so sorry, I forgot to send it to you. I'll email
Because we-
if you don't hear from me.
references, and
Yeah.
I'm still
In fact,
ignorant.
I think, yeah.
Sorry about that.
That may go for a while.
Anything else tonight? This is a good discussion.
Absolutely.
Great to see all
It
these
requires.
people here in person. Welcome to the new members. And we are adjourned at 8:10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone. Happy first meeting of the new cycle.
Recording stopped.